we could all identify a negative Nelly in our lives, right? The individual who does not have positive things to say, someone who always has something to complain about, somebody to make fun of, somebody to drag down. They're living out of a place of such bitterness, resentment, discontent, that when they see individuals rise up or find success or have positive things happen, it bothers them. It gets them angry. It makes them upset, and they lash out sometimes. It reminds me of a scene in Rocky 3. And yes, the philosophy in this video, on this channel, and 90 to 95% of the philosophy in my own brain comes from Rocky movies and 80s action films. So if you want to skip this entirely and get the message through an 80s action film, which would be more entertaining, do that. But there's this interaction where Paulie says to Rocky, "To hell with everybody." And Rocky says, "Maybe it's to hell with you." I love that sequence. I bring it up all the time, and I think about it all the time, because there is this tendency to take the victim card, right? And be like, look at this unfair thing, look at this unfair thing, that doesn't make sense, this is bullcrap. And you want to point at everybody else and say, oh, this person, that person, this isn't fair, I do this, they don't do that. And that leads you nowhere good. Right? You see the different trajectories through the Rocky franchise. I love it. You see the embodied philosophies kind of play out in this allegory. Where in the first film, Rocky and Paulie are in a very similar position, right? Both outside of their prime, both bums in the neighborhood, been passed over. They're very much so in a similar circumstance, and you see the different paths they take and the different mindsets they hold. Rocky does not play the whole victim card and point fingers at people and blame others. Paulie, in fact, does do that. He only wants to look for a victim. He only wants to tell you why it's unfair. He only wants to say that he is, he is just as good as anybody else, but it's only because of X, Y, or Z that he didn't get his chance. And it's like, I get like this sometimes. I become Paulie. Just like there is a dark wolf and a light wolf in all of us, which one will you feed? There is a Rocky and a Paulie within all of us. And we got to choose which one we're going to foster a relationship with and how we're going to move through life. I get like this with my heart condition, right? Where I have to mind my P's and Q's. I can't drink anymore. I have to make sure I'm exercising, right? Doing a lot of cardio. I put in a lot of work and effort, and I had to take all these medications and stuff. I have to put in all this work to still die younger than an individual that I see out there not caring about diet at all, not working out at all, partying, drinking, doing whatever they want. And there's parts of my life, right? I'm human. I get so angry and I get so upset and I lash out at that. And I'm like, yeah, how can this individual be so undisciplined and so lazy and this and that? And I'm over here trying my best. And if I mess up and if I drank alcohol, my Billy Rubens would skyrocket. I get so like, you know what I mean, worked up about it and so angry about it. But I always try to cut that off. I always try to return to that parking garage between Rocky and Paulie and realize it's to hell with you. Because each and every one of us has a dozen or more circumstances in our life that is unfair. Life has kicked us all in the teeth over and over. And we all, from the very beginning, were in a bad position. And we had an uphill battle to climb. But look, if you choose to be the victim on that, if you choose to identify with that, and if you choose to just feed into that Paulie resentment, it's everybody else, can you believe this unfair nature? Where does that take you? Where would that take me if I only leaned into that side of myself that complained about others and was like, look how unfair this is. Maybe I'll just drink anyway. And I just start drinking or whatever, and I self-sabotage. That would be a very different person than I am now, where it's like, what if I stay disciplined? What if I do what I have to do? And yeah, it's still in the face of inevitable death. Yeah, it's in the face of inevitable loss. But you choose to do it anyway. Why? Because of who it will build, who I will become, staying disciplined, staying off the alcohol, making sure I'm taking my medicine, doing all that I can to foster the best version of me here and now is always going to serve me better. It's always going to put me in a better position than if I were to say, throw my hands up and say, look how unfair life is. Look how cruel this place is. Look how God doesn't care about me. Look at my, cursed state. That would take me somewhere very, very different that I don't want to be. I don't want to live out of that place. I'm all about dragging others up the hill of life. I'm all about finding the ideal and trying to live up to it. I'm all about finding the hero within. So I want to do that for me, and I want to do that for you. That's why I make these videos, right? I want to just stir something up in you where you look at your circumstance and you're like, yeah, this has been unfair, but I'm stronger than that. I'm better than that. And that doesn't mean there's going to be any kind of external or outcomes that are in your control, right? You might not get success or the girl or whatever, but who are you going to choose to be in here, in your heart? What kind of place are you living out of? Because, man, it's exhausting to be a Paulie. It's not a healthy, happy place to be living with such resentment and such bitterness and to be such a victim. So where can you find strength in you? Where can you choose to pick up the fight and climb and keep going anyway? Where can you choose to not complain, not make fun, not point fingers, and just work on yourself? For no other reason, not for the external outside gains, right? But to work on yourself for you, for what it would build in you and who you would become. That's all I'm going to say today. All right, guys, take care.